I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with the Ramras. Mend will be back tomorrow. He is sorely missed. It feels like the band's not all together when he's not here. And go on.
I have nobody to argue with. You and I agree on too much. I need men to be here to tell me why I'm wrong and then later to turn out to be right, which just pisses me off, but it's true.
There you are. And that's actually quite funny. But I was on the phone before with a friend of mine who's in the business in Hollywood, and we were talking about Sydney Sweeney, and I haven't had much interest in this story just because people talk about it. I've never seen a movie of hers, to be honest with you. I find her semi attractive enough. I have listen, it's just not my wheelhouse. But I was thinking to myself, it's quite amazing that she hasn't backed down. She hasn't apologized. President Trump, J.D. Vance came to her defense. And I was on the phone with my friend talking about, there being a bit of a shift in Hollywood, as you brought up, Skydance buying Paramount. They tend to, I don't know what their politics are, but they're in the business of making money. And I was thinking to myself, where the hell is Mark Wahlberg? Where the hell is Chris Pratt? Where the hell is Adam Sandler? Supposedly conservative guys. I'm not in the ballot box with them, but where are these men being men again? Go on.
I'm
And
sorry. I think
defending.
you're asking the wrong question, Judah. You're asking about where are the conservative men? Where are the men? I don't need anybody to have a specific political bent in order to step forward and say, you are bullying a woman for no reason. You are bullying a woman because of some perceived slight that if you take a step back, put down the crack pipe and just really pay attention to what's going on and understand that synonyms exist and that homonyms exist and all of that, then you're just doing this because it's performative outrage and you are targeting a woman who has done nothing but, frankly, be beautiful and be in Hollywood. So I don't need it to be a conservative guy. Where's Glenn Powell? Glenn Powell, a guy I like very much, a friend of mine has actually partnered with him in business. And I think he's unbelievably talented. I think he is the future star that is going to take over the mantle where Tom Cruise leaves off, or at least where Ryan Reynolds leaves off. And not a word. Glenn Powell's career right now owes a major debt to Sydney Sweeney. I don't need everybody to step forward. Chris Pratt may not know her. So for him to step forward would have to be something where he's like, I'm going to do the chivalrous thing and protect this random woman. But for a guy like Glenn Powell to remain silent, the movie Anyone But You is a movie that basically put him from that guy's interesting in Top Gun Maverick to that guy's a star, and everything started to roll after that. And that mostly was a movie because Sydney Sweeney was in it. And then later people realized, oh, Glenn Powell too. That guy should be stepping forward and saying, this is ridiculous. Now, to your point, I love that he's not saying, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have made the joke about jeans since I was in a jeans ad. You guys know that it's spelled with a J, right? You mental deficients. But I love that she's not apologizing, because one thing we've talked about it before, but not about this topic, is those who don't back down stand tall. And I'm reminded of Scarlett Johansson when the jihadi Hamas loving crowd decided to go after her. Why? Because she's Jewish. And she said, I'm going to keep advertising SodaStream if I want to. I don't care if it's an Israeli company. I'm going to defend Woody Allen if I want to. I don't care that you made up some story because Mia Farrow heard a song that her ex-husband sang and then created a whole narrative based on it that clearly is false. I don't care. I'm going to stand by my ideals. And Scarlett Johansson just broke the record. She is the #1 star in the history of movies in terms of grossing and starring roles. #1 in the world. Sam Jackson dropped down to #2. The only one that can beat her is Stan Lee, and he does cameos, or did.
I was about to say, I think he's dead.
With AI, he's coming back.
But no, I think it's a brilliant point what you just brought up. I love that you did do the separation, because you're 100% right. It's a woman that's being bullied, obviously. And this is a whole Ben Stein thing. It's always been, where are the women? Obviously many other people, but he's been bringing this up for years, especially the National Organization for Women. It's all going back to Hillary Clinton with the Monica Lewinsky thing, and none
By
of
the
them
way,
coming
wait a
to her
second.
defense.
You're absolutely right. I didn't even, me as a man, okay, I will admit, I bring to the table my own personal, what do they call it, lived experience. But you're right. Where are the women? Where are the
Yeah.
women defending her?
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis will speak about anything but what's actually important. And that's really a sad thing. Where were all the women for Deborah Messing? Where were all the women for the women that were brutalized in Israel?
Where were all
I
the
mean,
women
it's
for Juliana Margulies? I can give you a long list of women that don't say a word when other women are brutalized, as long as it's part of, as we often talk about, the woke doctrine, as long as it fits into the parameters of what we as a society are supposed to condemn or celebrate. There's no such thing as just defending right and wrong and good and evil. We have to look over and see if the cheat sheet says these people are oppressed or oppressor, then we're allowed to say something. This is not only the height of hypocrisy, this shows you how really just debased these people are. And it's my business. I'm a screenwriter, I'm a producer, I am active in the industry. And as my wife has heard me rant about many, many times, I think I've liked three people. One of them is off the list, but I've liked three people that I've worked with that were movie stars, about two others that I've met but didn't work with, and everybody else is a nightmare disaster of a cesspool.
how do you really feel? And the reason I only brought this up today was she was going to a movie premiere, I guess, and somebody called her a racist. And neither here nor there. We got to the point of the story. I want to move on though because there is a lot going on in the news. But one of the things I constantly think about, Golan, is what would America, what would the world right now do without Donald Trump? I mean, I mean this, and even when you see CNN reporting on this, you see a real shift in sentiment. And I'm not talking about these idiot, the idiot guest lists, and where like seven people are on a tribunal, and it's like Survivor, and Scott Jennings always makes it off CNN Survivor, and but he really is the only thing between us and being Britain, the UK, and having a Western civilization that means something, having a West that means something.
Can we boil this down to brass tacks a little bit? There's a handful of things that Trump is the only bulwark against. One, let's call it Islamist terror. Okay, let's be kind. He is the only person that isn't bending the knee to, again, this woke doctrine, this woke ideology. And we can pretend it's not woke. We can pretend, no, 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 this is a separate issue. It's not. The reason why you see queers for Palestine and feminists for Palestine and basically everybody who would get thrown off a roof, raped, and then hung from a crane for Palestine is because they're told, let me look at the cheat sheet over here. Yep, the daily cheat sheet. And this one says oppressed, this one says oppressor. Okay, no matter where I stand, even though if they would murder me 1,000 times over, I got to march for them because it's on the list. And that includes Macron, of course, that includes Starmer, that includes every country you can imagine lately except for the United States. The United States and Israel, of course, but the United States of the non Israeli countries
Well, we
who,
consider the West. Israel's never really considered in the West, especially. I mean, most people don't know this part of Asia, but it's never really considered. When we talk about the West, we exclude the Middle East. Middle East is not always the best way of defining Israel as calling them the Middle East, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about the West. We're talking about NATO
right.
members. We're talking about our NATO members usually.
All right, if we're boiling it down and kind of isolating it to NATO members, Trump is still the only leader that is calling out Islamist terror by name, not appeasing it, no euphemisms, no playing games, no dancing around the issue. He is saying the answer is no, with Rubio by his side saying, you guys from the PA can't come in because you keep paying for terror. You're terrorists yourselves. You used to be called the PLO. Everybody knew who you were. You were the people blowing up airplanes. You were the people who basically invented taking hostages and hijacking planes out of the sky. And just because Clinton decided these guys think like they might be legit and then turned you into the PA didn't make you, even though he's admitted it was a mistake, didn't make you any more legitimate or any less of a terrorist group. And so he's the one saying no to that while everybody else is bending the knee and saying we'll recognize Palestine with no caveats, no mention of the terror of the hostages and tunnels except for Germany. Germany is the one who still has enough guilt, thank God, and I'm going to give them credit for that guilt because sometimes guilt and having your country so thoroughly destroyed, as I mentioned a number of episodes ago, that you no longer have a taste for genocidal conquest, and that includes when other people are doing it. So basically, Germany is the one that I'll put a little bit aside, even though they're also starting to kowtow to their Islamist invaders. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. Trump is the only one standing tall against this particular threat. He is the only one that wanted to go forward bombing Iran. He is the only one that was willing to say, I'm going to put the world on notice, even if it's a bit uncomfortable here when it came to tariffs. He's the only one that is doing this time and time and time again on every topic that you can imagine, saying, I understand that Tulsi Gabbard doesn't like what I'm doing. And when Tulsi's on my side, great. And when she's not, I don't care what she has to say. He's done that with people within his own administration, within his party, and of course within the country. He doesn't care about what other people are doing. And I'll give you a quick example and then I will stop. I know I don't want to monologue too long about this, but I was having a conversation today about the two biggest threats that are currently going on online when it comes to the destruction of the West. The first is TikTok, and the second is AJ Plus, Al Jazeera Plus. I was talking to Guy Goldstein, who's been a guest host on our program, and he and I were chatting about how these two things must be destroyed or they are going to destroy us. And remember, there was a legal reason why TikTok was going to get basically either purchased, sold, destroyed, whatever you want to call it, and Trump stopped it. And I think at first Trump thought to himself, am I going to shut down this thing when the last time I extended the hold, I got such praise from all the young people who were not necessarily in my party that I felt like Jesus on the mound. And now I'm going to shut it down. What kind of fallout is there going to be? But as we're watching over and over again, whether it's supporting Israel, whether it's telling states they're not going to get FEMA aid if they do BDS nonsense, whether it's bombing Iran despite Tucker and Candace and whoever else telling him not to, and all the rest, I think it's gotten to the point now where Trump might not care what other people are saying. So I'm loving this version, and he is the only one doing it.
Well, listen. I think you're 100% correct. One of the reasons I brought it up today was also because of the 2028 Olympics, and they're doing a task force where he's saying to California, "You'll get whatever you want. You just can't allow men and women to compete in the same sports." It's that simple. I don't know anybody else that would have enough guts and courage at this point. I think Rubio is there. I think Vance would be there too. But you really believe it when Trump's saying it. He's coming out there saying, no money, no money, absolutely no money if men or women are playing, and you gotta love it. He's referencing the 1932 Olympics, he's referencing the 1984 Olympics, and he's talking about how great sports is, and again, it's like I'm not. I'll be honest with you, Golan. I haven't watched the Olympics since 1992, and that's when the Dream Team came. And I think I watched the Dream Team. And the reason why I stopped watching it is Herb Brooks had a great line, the famous coach from USA Hockey. And it was, they call them Dream Teams. And I'm getting it totally wrong. But it seems like there's no dreaming anymore in a sense. Like we've taken away the dream. And I
You mean
stopped
from the
watching.
Olympics?
No, because it was professional athletes.
That's okay.
So,
This is what I meant, though,
right,
is that
right.
look, the Olympics, for those of you who don't know, the point of the Olympics is to be a competition amongst amateurs to see who is the best amateur. And then some of those people go on to do great things. Some of them end up on Wheatie boxes, and some of them, like Mary Lou Retton, disappear from the world. But the whole point is they're not professionals. So when you take the greatest basketball players in the world, mash them together into one amalgamation of a team, and then throw them at a bunch of amateur teams, and then you win. Hey, I'm a basketball fanatic. Okay, I have been watching basketball since I have memories that form, and I had season tickets, and I used to cover for when I was a reporter. I used to cover basketball in Arizona back when the Charles Barkley and the Cotton Express was going on. And in fact, Dan Marley and I became friends. I have so many great stories, but I couldn't stand it. To me, that was just a bastardization of what the Olympics was. I totally agree
Right.
with you.
And even though, listen, we know that Russia brings professionals and Germany brings professionals and all those things, that was never about who we were about. And I could get into the whole thing of how this all happened when John Thompson, the famed black coach from Georgetown, picked a team of not necessarily the best players in 1988 and there were a couple of white guys that might have been left off the roster who were exceptional shooters, and we lost. And hence the dream team. And I haven't watched it since then, but that's neither here nor there. I absolutely love what President Trump did. And
I want to point out what he said, though, because you're pointing out the restrictions that he gave, which I think are absolutely fine. I think that he didn't go overboard. He didn't try to impose 1,000 different MAGA things onto the Olympics. He just said, keep it fair. But the thing that really mattered here was he recognizes that this is a target. He recognizes this is a target for terrorism, and he knows that the number one terrorism that's going to target something like this, they've done it before, are the Muslims. And especially right now, with him being, again, that bulwark against Islamist terror, it's even more going to make the Olympics a target. So, what did he say? And I quote, I want the Olympics to be safe, seamless, and historically successful. He's putting $1 billion in federal funding for security, logistics, and planning. He is basically, and he's announcing it. So he's not, sometimes you look at like the way El Al security works in Israel, you don't even know they're there until something happens. And then the homeless guy and the guy who's rooting through the garbage and the hot dog vendor, they all suddenly, they turn out to be Mossad agents and they attack. That's an interesting way to do it. He is telling everyone up front, you want to come here and cause trouble? There's $1 billion earmarked for this. It's all going into security. This is going to be the safest event ever. So if you want to get in here, you're probably going to die trying. And he's making it something that basically is a deterrent against anything that could happen in LA. And as a result of doing it, he's saying, since we've got the big stick over here, I'm letting you know you're getting that security. Your city's getting that security. Your event is getting that security. It's going to pour an amazing amount of money into Los Angeles, but you're not getting it if you don't follow my rules. Love
I
it.
love it. I love it. And I wish he would get to homeless out as a national security risk while he's at it. That would be an amazing thing. And for people that are really
California
not
only cleans up the homeless when the Chinese are coming.
exactly like the movie The Interview. But I do want to move on a little bit to I love that. I mean, I'm not nobody's a fan really of John Cornyn from Texas. No Republican pretty much or MAGA is a fan of John Cornyn for a lot of good reasons. But he's trying to get the FBI to go and chase down these 100 Democrats or whatever amount that ran away from the city, from the state, so they wouldn't have to vote on legislation where Republicans would pick up 6 seats. This isn't something new. And Kathy Hochul comes out today and says, "We're gonna, governor who has no power over this. We're
Right.
gonna do, we're gonna fight fire with fire." And I'm like, you do this all the time. You did this to Republicans in South Carolina. You do this all the time. Finally, Republicans are wising up to this and saying, well, they've done it in the past, but we're going to do this now. And I love that he's calling for this is one of those times. Yes, call Kash Patel, get the FBI to arrest Jasmine Crockett. I truly do want to see her on an episode of Cops. Okay, that's one of my goals in life.
Of course, the problem is that just like we talked about with whoever leaked the Supreme Court decision and those people getting punished and then becoming heroes, there's also a tremendous amount of money that gets poured into those people's defenses. Look no further than the jihadis that Trump had arrested for deportation. The sheer amount of money that was poured into their defense funds was astronomical. And so here, what are they talking about? $500 a day fines. Maybe there was bribery involved. I mean, it's. I appreciate that Cornyn is trying to sound the alarm and talking about arrest warrants. Let's be realistic. If that happens, these people all become martyrs, all become heroes,
Can I tell you something?
historically heroes.
I want to tell you something. This
Yeah,
is I'm going to tell you something because I thought about that and I
yeah.
disagree with you on this. So
And
we
try,
can disagree
please.
because I think we're having a shift in public perception. I think Trump is truly bullying through like the woke and everything else. And I think when you just look at his cabinet, how diverse his cabinet is on so many different levels, and how I don't think what they're selling people are buying. And if people want to use New York as anecdotal data, again, I keep on saying it's only 21% of New York that's actually voting for this person. I don't think so. I don't think Jasmine Crockett will be the face of the opposition. I just don't.
By the way, now you say that, but do you know that there was a recent poll done where they asked a tremendous amount of people? It wasn't one of those like really myopic, 16 people were asked kind of poll, asking the Democrats, not the Republicans, but asking the Democrats, who do you consider to be the face of your party? Number one, by far with a bullet, was AOC. Number two, who do you think it was?
Jasmine Crockett, and you know
Jasmine
what? Go
Crockett.
on. Thank God. Glory be to God
I said the same thing.
that she is the number two face. But again, my point is, I don't think they'll be into martyrdom. She's not Rosa Parks, okay? She's a jackass congresswoman from Texas that nobody gives a crap about, other than she can't. She's like Maxine Waters and Al Sharpton's child, okay? I mean, literally, and the two of them had sex, and Jasmine Crockett came out, and that
Thank
comes.
you so much for that visual. Oy, oy, oy.
That's actually pretty funny. And don't cut that out. I said it. Those aren't the feelings of everybody on this show. They are just the feelings of Judah Friedman. But I want to move on to.
Wait, wait, wait,
I
wait.
want.
I gotta say, I just want to point out one thing, okay? Is that, again, I appreciate the concept of it, but you know, Texas state troopers can't like go into Chicago and arrest people. It's just not the way it works. And you can't just kick people out of their seats because they didn't show up for work. The courts wouldn't allow that. And by the way, according to the law, that's not the way it works either. Now, it doesn't mean we can't change the law. It doesn't mean we can't push it. It doesn't mean we can't try something. But a lot of this is hollow shouting into the wind. What I'd really like is for everyone to just get back to doing their effing jobs, because while these gimmicks are cute and they're doing it for publicity, you say you don't think they're ready to be martyrs. They're trying to be martyrs right
Well, what
now.
I'm saying, but right, what I'm saying is it's a horrible optic. Okay, what worked 5 years ago isn't working now. They're still playing the old playbook, and I got to tell you, Republicans and the people Trump has put together are so much smarter than these people could ever dream of being. So I mean, when you look at Trump's team, it's such a fantastic team. They're like the traveling Wilburys. Apart, they're all monster music making machine hits. You put them together, and you have the greatest super band ever made.
For those of you who don't know, you're talking about Bob Dylan and George Harrison and Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne and Roy Orbison.
But anyways, that's who is representing us now. Just the greatest super group you could imagine. So all of these things aren't having the same effect because Trump's cabinet is so tight. They were able to get this stuff done because you had Jeff Sessions resigning immediately. You had chiefs of staff leaving. You had press secretaries leaving. Everybody was going and coming and leaving. Right now, there's a tight group. So that's the difference between now and then. But I want to move on to James Comer. And you heard me on The World According to Ben Stein when I said this. And again, I won't mention who I said it to. When they brought up, Comer investigating Hunter Biden, I said, nothing's going to come of it. And this went back for a few weeks, and I was like, nothing's going to come of it. And this is James Comer. This is just, no offense to James Comer. I don't even know who the hell James Comer is. I know he's a congressman from somewhere, but he wants to be a congressman now from everywhere. And he wants to be, like, in a sense, a Trey Gowdy type, I guess, minus the prosecutorial part of it. But he's subpoenaing everybody that's been involved in Washington. And I mean, the list goes on and on with Jeffrey Epstein. And I want to say to him, go on, pass bills, let the DOJ do the investigating and do their job. Enough with these, cockamamie, subpoenaing people and doing all this stuff. I get it. I don't get it, to be honest with you.
Well,
Nothing's
look, I
gonna.
mean, okay, so for our viewers, he's the Republican representative from Kentucky. Okay, so you would think, what does he have to do with anything? He also happens to be the chairman of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. So that's the reason why, at least he is saying, I am doing this. The list of people that he has put together, you're talking about the Clintons and the Muellers and the Comeys and the
And Bill
Loretta
Barr.
Lynch and Bill Barr and Merrick Garland, Eric. I mean, it's actually silly, to be honest with you, and a giant waste of time. This is what you call a circus. And the fact that he's doing it instead of letting everyone do their jobs, and as we talked about, remain transparent in doing so, he's making it a sideshow freak thing instead of actually letting it play out like a proper case. Here is where the media can say, you see, they're not serious about any of this. And it's a massive mistake, in my opinion.
Right. As opposed to somebody like Tom Cotton, who's saying to CAIR, we're removing your funding. We're going to fight to, and CAIR is the Arab group that defend, everybody loves to talk about APAC. Trust me, CAIR is a lot stronger and powerful and more powerful than CAIR is. I mean, is less powerful than CAIR is.
Oh my
And
God, by a lot.
Tom Cotton is trying to defund and defang them. And this is what I love about people like Tom Cotton. I know he doesn't always get the high praise that he deserves, but he's a good man and he does a good job. And this is important. Not what Comer is doing, is actually pulling the funding away from a terrorist organization.
For those of you who don't know, CAIR is the Council on American Islamic Relations.
Oh, I would have thought Arab was in there. So thank you.
No, it's not actually. That's the interesting part. Don't forget, Arab is an actual race, right? There's something that is in your genetic code that means you're Arab. When you get a DNA test, you can have Arab blood. You can't have Muslim blood because
I asked you
Muslim
not to
is
share
a
about my.
religion.
I asked you not to share about my 23andMe.
But it is the Council on American Islamic Relations. And this is not only a Muslim, quote unquote, I'm putting it in heavy quotes, Muslim advocacy group. They call themselves a civil rights organization. That's how you know they are full of shit. Because what they've done, and there's been hidden recordings, private recordings that have leaked, where this group is basically saying, we know it's horseshit, but we have to convince all the people in America that we are like the black people pre the civil rights movement and all of that. We're the oppressed. And they did this time and time and time again, even though they didn't believe it. They still don't believe it. And there's no parallel at all. They made it seem to so many people like that was the case, that Black Lives Matter, in their initial charter, they were partnered up right with the Islamists. All right. From the very beginning. And they have been for a long time. You think all the way back to, the Farrakhan's and everything else. There was always a dovetail between these two groups. Remembering that in 2007, the Justice Department named CAIR an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation terrorism financing trial. A major thing. We're not going to go into the whole thing right now, but you should look it up.
Are
Again, I'm
you
going to say,
sure?
well, I'm happy to go into it if you think
I'm
it's time to do
kidding.
so. Okay. Because there's a 17-minute rant in me on this, but I just want everyone, go look it up. Okay. You can Google this, the Holy Land Foundation terrorism financing trial. The shorthand of this is, the leaders of CAIR were convicted of funneling millions of dollars to, wait for it, Hamas. That was way back then, and they have been a part of Hamas since before then and since then. That's the group we're talking about. So Tom Cotton saying enough is enough, we've all known this. There is a recording you can listen to right now on the internet where they talk about, we got a 20-year plan. This is 2007. Wonder what year it is. A 20-year plan to take over America by convincing everyone, all the idiots, all the gullible morons, all the useful idiots, that we are the oppressed, that we are the ones who need civil rights. That's why they threw that name into their title. And that we are the ones who, because we're in the, well, let me check the cheat sheet. Yep, we're the ones you have to march for, no matter who you are, you dumb shits. And therefore, we are where we are today. And Tom Cotton finally said, I can't believe it took this long, but enough is enough.
Listen, I think it's extremely well said, and I thank God you're way more knowledgeable about CAIR than I am. That's why I just throw it to you, because I know that you will be able to catch it very well. So Israel has announced that that's it. They're done. They are going to go into Gaza and take over the last 25%. And it's heartbreaking, obviously, because the odds are that those remaining hostages that are alive will not be coming out alive. And it's also important to remember that Israel and the West is in this predicament because Israel actually negotiated with terrorists, and we got a soldier alive back, and we got a few soldiers that were dead, right? And for 1,200 prisoner swap, which then led to Yahya Sinwar and Hamas being the powerhouse monstrous organization that they are. And so Israel can't negotiate. There is no ceasefire. They've offered everything. Just so people know, so for talking points when people disagree, Israel's accepted pretty much, just like in 1948 with the partition, they've accepted every pretty much ceasefire deal that could possibly be done. And it's been Hamas that's walked around the table. Witkoff has said, everybody has said this, so we know this to be 100% true. And I love that the United Nations, they'll go on, our favorite organization, of course, coming out and saying, this is very disturbing of Israel. And it's just like, again, I say, what the F is the UN doing in the United Nations? What the hell is the United Nations doing in the US? I mean, what are we even allowing? They're terrorists. And so there we are, going.
Well, 100%. They are a terrorist group, and if you say, "Oh, that's hyperbolic," they're not terrorists. No, they are made up of terrorists, and they are a corrupt group that allow the terrorists to make decisions. So whatever semantics you need to apply to make yourself feel better about it, I think we can all agree that terrorist is still in their headline. And yeah, they called this deeply alarming. And I have some deep not going to say that. That's inappropriate on camera. But what my thoughts are about the UN is exactly what yours are. They should be disbanded. They should, you know what? I think half the people should be arrested in the UN.
I agree with you. I don't even think that's a question. My question is, there's 139 countries or states in the United Nations. Most of them, a majority of them, coming from
Right.
terrorist nations. I mean, there's nothing debatable about that. If any of these people were on the street, we would arrest them for belonging to terrorist organizations. But you put them in a building, say the label the United Nations, put a bunch of flags around, all of a sudden they're respectable. And
Right.
this
They're the
was the
moral
problem.
authority.
Right. And this is the sad part, was what gave the original PLO, right, which was Yasser Arafat. And just so people understand, Yasser Arafat's the one that came up with the term Palestinian. In as far as
Egyptian born Yasser Arafat. I would actually, no, I push back. I don't think he's the one who came up with the term
no, I
Palestinian.
meant that brought it in, that said that that part of Israel
Who
should
came
be
up with it,
called.
Judah?
Please do tell.
The Russians, the same people who came up with the Elders of Zion hoax, the same people who basically have laid the groundwork for every piece of propaganda that is still alive today, anti-Jewish, anti-Israel propaganda, or anti-Zionist, propaganda, all came from the Russians. And they were the ones who helped form the PLO.
Masters.
They were the ones who helped come up with hijacking airplanes. They were the ones who came up with the Palestinian identity. Go watch my episode of Jew Can't Handle the Truth called The Myth of the Palestinians. And I talk at length about, at the time, what the Arabs and what the Jews called themselves. All the Jews were called Palestinians. That's why on their coins it said Palestine and then in parentheses, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. That's why the Palestinian football team, it wasn't called the Jerusalem Post back then, it was called the Palestinian Post, the Jewish newspaper. All the organizations that are still around today, Karen Ayasod used to be the Palestinian. Everything was Palestinian. That was the Jews. The Arabs hated the term. They were like, ew, gross. That's a Jew term. We are Southern Syrians, they would say. And so the idea that he was able to look at a map and go, wait, this word exists. If we say we're this word, we can pretend we've been here forever, even though we're the invading colonizers, which, by the way, whisper, whisper, Arab. Hmm. The Arabian Peninsula? Well, it's right there in the title, you idiots. So the fact that you couldn't figure this one out without my help is a real sad statement on your education. But yeah, this has been from day one a manufactured identity. Go check out my episode. You listen to me talk for an hour there and you'll get a real education.
On Jew Can't Handle the Truth. But
Correct.
it was also Yasser Arafat that I believe was the first person to ever bring a gun into the United Nations, and he brought the
On his hip.
revolver on his hip, right? And that sort of made him hip, and that really
Like
sort of,
Che Guevara, another
right.
piece of
That's
shit that we
exactly
like to have on our t-shirts.
right. You're exactly right. That's a great analogy. I wanted to save this for last. It's interesting. It's really hard, guys, when we're doing this type of show. Like, it's very hard because we want to pick topics that are resonate with everybody, and obviously Israel is a topic that resonates with all of us. But at the same time, it should also resonate with you, with everybody in America. Just like I've brought up when we had that abortion issue, talking about, not issue, but when we were talking about it, and I brought up the whole reason my thing with it has a lot to do with science and not God, right? So I thank God for the Christians who Israel to them is a God thing. And I'm grateful, thank God. But to the rest of the people, I go to the science of Israel. And I go to forget about all the things they've brought, forget about all that, forget about everything they've brought to humanity. I go to this goal. I say, as Hamas is reporting every, the MAGA movement, and this is why it's really important to me. And it's not the MAGA movement, it's the faux MAGA. I really do not consider these people MAGA because support among Republicans with Israel is still 71%. I'm sure it's a little higher. But you have the most skeptical people in the, and I'm being kind when I use that
Right.
word, skeptical, for right reasons. I'm not blaming their skepticism. Okay. So you questioned Fauci, you were correct. You questioned the WHO, you were correct. You question the CBO with every time Trump comes up with a bill. You question everything. Every single number you've questioned when it comes to the left and their science and every single thing, yet you're willing to buy Hamas's numbers on how many people are starving and how many people were killed. Okay, this is the number you're deciding to buy from Hamas. You don't, Fauci, you don't, nobody you trust. You don't trust the vaccines. Fine, I agree with you. I don't trust them either. But at the same point, I am not trusting a Hamas talking point. And I keep on saying this, going on. I'm looking at the damn pictures. Pictures tell a lot, as you well know, since you're in the business. And I brought this up yesterday. Obviously, these are photo shoots that are done of people coming to get the food. We know that. And yes, there are hungry people, obviously, in Gaza. There's no denying that. But this talk of starvation, we know Hamas would show babies with their shirts up, famished and bone to bone. And it's amazing that these MAGA people, and I'm sure this is what drives Trump crazy is he said, no, there's not a genocide going on. It's called war that was started by Hamas. And good for Trump for saying that. But why are
Absolutely.
you, the true question going on is, what is it that you're so willing to believe the numbers with Hamas, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, obviously, or anybody else, Thomas Massey, Bernie Sanders? What is your major malfunction?
100% right, and a wonderful observation. The idea that these people, their default position is to doubt establishments, and like we said, in many cases, rightfully so. That skepticism has been earned. And so to now allow that skepticism to dissipate, to now allow this be the one thing that you're like, but on the other hand, here is my trusted source. The people who on camera raped, tortured, dismembered, kidnapped, and murdered people. These are the people I'm going to believe. We didn't talk about this beforehand, so you have no idea what I'm about to bring up, but I read a story today that blew my mind. There is a German newspaper called Bild, Bild, and they wrote an expose that was like a bomb dropping. I don't know if this is going to spread far and wide because the media loves to keep everything quiet, as we discussed when the hostage videos were released a couple of days ago. 0% of the mainstream media newspapers, with the exception of the New York Post, even printed a photo of it. Many ignored the story altogether. That is willful ignorance. That is willfully closing your eyes to reality because you cannot allow that to seep out because it screws up your narrative. So we'll see. But here's what the expose said. It was revealing that Gaza based photographers, and they used several examples. They had this one guy, Anas Fatiha, who was staging hunger photos for Hamas propaganda. Oh, huh? What? Like you just said a moment ago. These activists posing as journalists, literally fabricating scenes to feed the narrative. And they weren't, and by the way, this is important. I don't mean they took 1,000 pictures and then they were like, this one looks the most terrible for the Israelis. So they weren't cherry picking images. They were orchestrating them. They literally, these scenes of starving kids, they were like tearing the clothes on cue. They have evidence of all of this, all to juice international sympathy, where real journalists are locked out. See, this is the thing. It's called Pallywood. Pallywood, like Hollywood, but Palestine, Pallywood. And the Pallywood Redux is a theater of nothing but manipulation. It's basically, if you're looking at the press that is blocked there, and we've talked about in the past how journalists who did try to work within Gaza or were partnered with people that were within Gaza had information blocked, and to the point where their newspapers couldn't even note we had other information, but Hamas blocked it, because then the person in Gaza would have been tortured, killed, and their whole family would have been massacred. And so they just wrote whatever Hamas told them to write. The journalists today are able to say that about what they witnessed years ago and what has continued since. So because there's no journalists in Gaza, including photojournalists, the only pictures coming out of Gaza are manufactured. And if you're pinning your outrage on photos,
And numbers.
but let's just put numbers aside, because numbers, they've repeated those numbers so often that they almost sound like, well, they're the numbers floating in a beautiful mind. The thing that started this recent trend of everybody coming out, including Trump for a moment until he realized he'd been manipulated, but everybody coming out and saying, okay, well, we can't deny these poor Gazans. I mean, look at that starving kid on the cover of the New York Times, plus three other photos of other starving kids, all of which had deformities and pre existing conditions, probably because their parents were related. And I don't mean that as an insult. There's a 40% related parent issue in Gaza. And so they were pinning outrage on those pictures, and nobody knew who was pulling their strings. Bild says, and you can read the art, you can go online, you can look it up. Bild literally says the photos are not evidence of suffering, but are specifically evidence of curated messaging, everything manufactured. You should look into this further, all of you, anyone who's listening to this, because this isn't some siloed conspiracy theory. Okay, this is Germany, one of Germany's biggest newspapers. They have sourced documents, they have sourced interviews, they have sourced digital forensic evidence to expose this manipulation. This is not a fringe blog or Tucker talking to the ghost of Hitler. This is real, and you should check it out. It is a massive story, and I hope it goes far and wide.
Well said, and thank you for that. You really are like a wealth of like just useful information. I'm a well of useless information.
Hey, you're talking about the Traveling Wilburys. After this show's over, I'm going to go listen to that song.
And by the way, what I meant before with Israel, with it being important, is in that region, take God out of the equation, and yes, obviously all their scientific advances and with water and with desalinization and the Iron Dome and
Using AI to put out forest fires and
yeah,
stopping, I mean, a thousand things.
just a thousand things, and it's the only Democrat place in that region, and that's why it matters. I mean, there's so many reasons why it matters. To put it into one thing, there's just so
Incredibly
many.
well put, Judah. This is really important. People don't think about this enough. They say America first, but if you ask me, part of being America first is also recognizing that it's our job to uphold our allies around the world, and recognizing which of those allies shares our values. We have some allies that are strategic. Okay, when we say Qatar's an ally, it's because Qatar has money. We have a base over there. It's in the region. We know we can't totally trust them, but they're a quote unquote ally. But there are certain allies that share our values and that help us. They are the wall stopping the flow of evil from taking over the rest of the world. And those are the allies that we should be protecting. If we're not doing that, then we are failing as America first.
Well said. And as we're closing up, Jim Acosta, I guess, took my idea of a hologram of Hitler and Tucker Carlson because he's doing a AI with a slain Parkland student. This sick, degenerate mother Tucker is, I mean, like, how low can you go on?
Oof. I didn't even know about this. So you're bringing it up, and right away I felt my chest tighten. This is Jim Acosta. Is that right? I mean, this is a chilling. What a concept. What is he scraping again? This is the same kind of thing. They're going to scrape this guy's life and then interview the AI as if the guy is speaking. I mean, that's twisted. I don't even know what to say about it. That is the kind of thing that makes, I guess, creepy, ghoulish. I think is what the word I would use for it. That is really not okay. It's bad enough when we throw old actors into Star Wars movies that have been long dead. But it was real with Peter Cushing. But to interview people and then let people listen as if they are getting information, this is not even a stunt. This is an abomination.
Yeah, yeah, well, no, 100%. And before I close up, just with one more point, I want to ask you something. I find it interesting because we have I think we have a pretty good grasp of foreign policy, domestic policy, but we also have a fun grasp of culture, of music, of movies. And I sometimes I feel like it's like when you write, I've written, so many pieces, and I like to, I tend to interject myself. Some of the best pieces I've written are when I didn't interject myself. But I find it interesting that so many people don't offer you. It's weird that people are so invested in people that don't offer something of themselves. I don't really understand that concept go on. I don't. I guess people do, but it's like I want you to offer something of yourself, and that's what I've always been sort of fascinated when I write or read or whatever or read especially is who I'm listening to.
That's a really interesting perspective. I think it's true. I think a lot of these talking head influencers, especially today, because look, it breeds a culture of grifterism, right? It breeds this culture of trying to take advantage of the listener. You're going to tell them what they want to hear. You're going to try and inflame a certain amount of rage because that's going to get you more minutes and that's going to get you more clicks and that's going to get you shared more often. You're going to say something shocking because that way you'll make sure that this goes viral. All of that kind of silly nonsense. I think that now it's more about the algorithm than it is about honesty and it is about being raw. I think this is what, for me, has made me stop listening to Joe Rogan. Initially, I will admit, I stopped listening for a moment after that Douglas Murray interview because I was so offended by how stupid the interview with Dave Smith and Joe Rogan was, where it was just clearly they were there for trolling purposes, not for conversation purposes. So at first I was like, well, I'm done. Then I'm like, but I enjoy Joe Rogan interviews. I've always enjoyed Joe Rogan interviews, most of them anyway. So I'll listen to another couple. And what I found was there was a profound shift in the way he was having conversations. Instead of just rambling, talking, shooting the shit like he had done before, kind of the stream of consciousness thing that could have gone anywhere. And half the time, suddenly they're talking about hunting, they're talking about aliens, they're talking about Bigfoot, and then they're talking about foreign policy, like this random thing. It became him trying to be a real interviewer because he saw that suddenly people were looking to him for information. So now he had a purpose, he had a point, he had studied certain things, and he was aiming the conversation that direction. And it became profoundly uninteresting to me because the spark that made this about Joe, the guy that suddenly was going to start talking about how I took a bow and I went out into the field and I tried to
Yeah,
bow hunt a deer, it was like, oh, that's real. He's talking about, I'm going to get stem cells. Now suddenly it's all the same shit over and over again. And he just sounds like all the other guys that are out there, all these other charlatans. So I think you're right. The more we sap away the personal, the more we become kind of the homogenized automatons, and the listeners too, by the way.
yeah. I never want that. I never want that.
Me
And
neither.
I just want to end with I always love, I say that all the time. It's like the great speaker lie, but in this case, I truly want to end on this. So yesterday I said on the show, we're not here to be influencers. We're here for people to snag our ideas and use them, and whoever that might be, influencers to people on Truth, to people on X, whatever it is, take our ideas, take our facts. Now, here's the deal with that. So Ben Stein, obviously people know we're like best friends. Just my love of the man is second to my only my parents and my family and a few other people. I mean, that's it. And Ben has been exceptional in my life and my career of helping me out. And part of being a team or being friends is when I would throw out an idea, and he would go on. He would go, "Oh, that's brilliant. That's really brilliant." And then he would write a piece for the American Spectator, and he would cite me in that. Cite me. He would say, "Heard it from Judah Friedman," and I was like, "Wow, thank you so much. That means the world to me." And if you're going to take people's ideas and suggestions, and sometimes we can't always remember, it's important to say, I heard it somewhere. Douglas Murray, you brought up.
Totally
Does
agree.
this all the time. He cites his sources, he cites his friends, he cites where he heard it from, all this different stuff. And it's extremely important. There's no worse form of thievery, especially it's a Jewish concept, than not giving recognition to the person that actually came up with the idea. So that's all I'm saying is I learned it from Ben Stein, especially. I didn't learn it from Ben Stein, it's just common sense, but I
Right.
loved how he did it. I loved how he wanted the next generation, which being me, to get credit. And that's an incredible gift and thing that he offered me and that he showed me. So I'm eternally grateful.
You
Yeah.
know, a friend of mine just this week experienced this, where he took some young influencers actually under his wing and was giving them ideas. A really, really intelligent guy, a guy who writes brilliant white papers, a guy who really understands things on a deep, deep, deep level and comes up with ideas and, thesis statements that other people wouldn't come up with, frankly. And then
Like
he was
Judah Friedman.
like Judah Friedman, of course. And he was mentoring some young influencers, and he was having a conversation with them. And some of the things were things that he was still developing. He hadn't quite finished the thought yet. And then suddenly he saw a blog post on Substack from one of them, and it was about that, about the thing that he had given them, clearly the thing that he had come up with, that he had extrapolated upon, that he had done research on, that he had even written a white paper on. This is something that suddenly showed up, no attribution. First of all, no request, of course, from him. Can we use your idea? It was just, this is going to make us look good. And I think part of that is that we live in an age now where everyone feels like they're a pundit. Everyone feels like they're an independent journalist. Half the internet thinks they're the first person to come up with an idea that's been floating around since the Federalist Papers. And and look, right now, they ask these kids, young kids today, and not even that young anymore, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the numbers are staggering. I'm going to exaggerate a bit. I don't know if this is the exact number, but it is a high number. 80% of them say, I want to be influencers. So if you want to be an influencer, then by any means necessary, you're going to do that thing. And to me, this is just thievery. I think you said it perfectly because it's not about being a Boy Scout with footnotes. It's not about making sure that every little T is crossed and I is dotted. It's about honesty. If you build your argument on someone else's reporting or their turn of phrase or even their basic idea, just acknowledge it. Otherwise, you are, to use our former president Joe Biden's not accusation, but confirmed crime, you're a plagiarist. And that's it.
Yeah, one of the most well documented plagiarist presidents of all time. And one of the things I love about Trump is that, he reads people on truth. He retruths people that he likes. He thanks them, and he thanks them personally. And that's what presidents used to do. And when they liked writers, they would thank them personally. They would send them notes or call them on the phone and thank them. And it's interesting though because I called somebody up and I said, and he was a comedian because there's no worse in the comic world to steal a joke. That's it. And this guy's a very big comedian, a very well respected comedian. And we were on the phone, and I was talking about this, and he said, "My God, if I had a resentment, and I'm sober, and we're both sober, and you're not afforded the luxury of having those types of resentments to survive." And he's like, "Judah, if I had a list of all the people that stole jokes from me, it would be a never ending." Type of thing. And I got off the phone and I let it go. I totally let it go, and I will let it go whenever it happens. But I just think it's important for people to say it doesn't matter who you hear it from. You could see an innocuous post, and like that time I saw an X when that girl wrote down that Muslims they're like dogs. I wish I would have thought of that. I was jealous, and I'm sad that I don't remember their name. They're like animals. They mark their territory, and I just thought, wow, brilliant concept. So if you hear brilliant concept, share where you got it or try to remember where you got it. I look at Douglas Murray and I say, wow, great work.
I want to say one more thing about this too, which is the other reason why it's important to do it is because otherwise you're trying to hide something a lot of the time, whether it's where you got your idea from, or I remember a while ago, Pod Save America. If you guys don't know Pod Save America, very leftist podcast, very, very popular as well. They were quoting Pew Research, but they didn't mention during the show that it was Pew. And the assumption of many people, because it was skewed reporting, was that if they had mentioned Pew, people could actually look at the methodology and find that the conclusions aren't exactly as they were selling them. So that's another way that people don't attribute and are doing it for the wrong reasons. There's a lot of reasons. Just show your work, people. Period.
Well, I mean, you hear it on our show all the time. We're constantly talking about David or the demon or Risa or whoever it is that I find their stuff to be incredible. I find their stuff to be absolutely incredible to read. I find sometimes people's posts they're just absolutely incredible, and I'll cite them. And I'm jealous sometimes. I'm not jealous in a bit. I'm like, damn, I wish I would have
You're
thought of
in
that.
awe of what
Right,
they come
right.
up
I
with.
mean, and as well you should be. If you're in any form of creative and you hear a song that you wish you could have written, or a lyric, or a line, or an article, you go, "Damn, I wish I would." And you don't steal that. You just say, "How am I going to do this?" And yesterday, I was upset. I couldn't come up with a great post, and I missed on the post, and I'm not going to beat myself up. You just challenge yourself the next day to come up with better. They're not going to be knockouts every day.
That's right.
So just people, thank you for all your input. It's all respected. I try to cite everybody whenever you can, and I know people are the same way. And so on that note, I want to thank Golan for always doing a remarkable job. The dude will be back tomorrow. Thank God for Golan's editing. You better get this one out quickly. I don't care what your excuses are. If I have to wake you up calling you in the middle of the night in Barcelona, you better get this brilliance out, because I want my creativity out, and our creativity. And
Thank you for crediting me on my creativity. Thank you.
we are up on Rumble right now, so you can follow us on Rumble at The Daily Cheat Sheet. We're also on YouTube at The Daily Cheat Sheet, Substack at The Daily Cheat Sheet, Instagram at The Daily Cheat Sheet, Truth at The Daily Cheat Sheet. We're everywhere at The Daily Cheat Sheet except X, which we are at TD Cheat Sheet. So follow us everywhere, and remember, give us that 5-star review. Like us. We're never going to ask you for money. We're never going to have a subscribe button. Nothing like that. Nothing. We promise you. Just all we want is a 5-star review and a comment. That's
And
it.
forward us along to your friends and family.
Yeah. Steal their phones. Hijack their phones. Steal their phones. Download the show. And on that note, I want to wish everybody. Okay, go on. I know I do this every day, but I've never explained it where it came from. I was always influenced by the radio. That's why I love talk radio. I would listen to radio in my room. I would listen to sports on the radio. I listened to everything. But there was a great show on in the 80s called Midnight Caller, where Gary calls. So I feel like I'm like snagging whoever created this line. And at the end of every show or episode, he would always say, "Good night, America," wherever you are. And it was a fantastic thing.
I'm going to have you do that again. I'm going to say, if you think about the best sign-offs in history, and a lot of them come from the left, which is great. Walter Cronkite, and that's the way it is, or Edward R. Murrow, now famously "Good night" and "Good luck," or any of these others, Paul Harvey, and now you know the rest of the story.
I was
All
going
of
to
these things.
challenge you, because I was going to say the best is from a conservative,
There you go.
because Paul Harvey.
Absolutely, one of my all-time favorites. And so if you think about all of those, to me, yours is actually one of the best that's out there. I think that it's clean, it's inspirational, it is communal. I got to say, I know that I don't mean to blow smoke. You're a friend of mine. I think you're a brilliant guy, but this is one of those things that if we continue doing this long enough, that it spreads even beyond the 123rd slot out of 50,000 to 80,000 news commentary podcasts. Thank you, everybody. Then this is going to be one of those catchphrases that when you look up what are the best catchphrases in history, yours will be among them. And now, if you wouldn't mind, would you thrill us with it?
I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.